This is The Devil's Grin number 7, Mark of the Beast. This is the first issue of the second volume of this story. And this is the first issue that comes in the smaller format. Before, the format that was published was the large magazine style, like the old Lemon Rockets. And Alex mentioned that she was going to have these at a smaller size to keep the cost down because of inflation, try to not make it too expensive for her fans. And I wasn't sure how the smaller format would work, but I actually like the smaller format a little better, only because it's easy to hold. You can take this to read anywhere you want. But she uses a 6-panel grid almost exclusively, and her artwork works well in this smaller format. Like sometimes you've seen like a Mobius comic or a Duryea comic that's reprinted in comic book size, but there's so much detail and there's so much intricacy because those were made for those big French BDs that it doesn't translate well to a regular comic size, but this does. Like manga translates well because it's made for this format. So I like it. I actually enjoy reading it. I'm surprised but I enjoy reading it more in the smaller format because I'm always a person that likes bigger format. But this is easy and fun to read. And it just continues the story of our protagonists who are really flawed human beings. I mean, Robert is like the main protagonist. And as much as you want to like the guy, he's such a reprehensible human being that you can't like him. I mean, he's an alcoholic, he's a drug user, he's a manipulator, he's a serial cheater, he's abusive to his girlfriend, Dandelion. And I don't know what her backstory is, but it seems like her dad is suffering from dementia, and he's just whacked out. So, a lot of times you'll have guys like this that look for women like this that will sit there and just take their crap and just have these toxic relationships. And as bad as it looks and maybe as non-PC as it is, this stuff happens every day. I've seen this stuff happen to people that I know. And it's some of the most realistic as far as a guy and it's funny because he's like super jealous, but it's always your womanizers that are the most jealous people because they assume that every other guy's a womanizer. So they're super jealous. Memo to the ladies, if you don't know that already, if your boyfriend's super jealous, he's probably cheating on you. Not just because he's insecure, because he assumes that every other guy's cheating on you. Dandelion gets approached by some guy to do fashion photography. Now, whether or not she kind of wants to believe that myth that he's a real fashion photographer, I think there's just some guy who's like talking crap, but he's not really published anywhere. Her friend Wish, who's a stripper, who's also seeing Robert on the sly, but none of these two ladies know that they're, having sex with the same guy. That'll be some nice fireworks when that happens. There's just a lot of people manipulating other people to get what they want. And I've always felt that when you have a book that deals with demons and devils and all that, a lot of the characterization, of this evil being is that they're doing these grandiose things. But really, in Christianity, Satan is the great deceiver. He takes people and he just kind of pushes them or puts them in situations where they will be, they will more than likely give in to the worst sides of their nature. And so it's nothing overt, it's just something very subtle, a prod here, a push here, really testing your morality and testing who you are as a human being. And, like there's a scene here where like he's high on like coke or some, or amphetamines. So one day he just goes nuts and there's a ton of work and his boss is like, yeah, look at this. You did all this work. This is what I really like. Robert looks whacked out of his mind, but the boss only cares about him being super productive and this is the way this is how I promote people, you keep it up. This whole thing of capitalism not giving a crap about human beings doing damage to themselves just to meet some ridiculous quota or unrealistic expectation, excuse me. This exploitive nature is just, I don't know if it's intentional, but this little 5 or 6 panel page sequence of just this exploitive nature of capitalism is just really lovely. And it's done so subtly that it's not like in your face, but it's so apropos. Um, Dandelion dates this toxic boyfriend and she gets angry with him, but then they have this thing where they argue, they're angry at each other, then they get back and they, have lots of wild, great, filthy sex. And, I've seen relationships like this too, where you're not getting along with somebody or you really don't care for each other, but the sex is so good that you stay with it. Um, Again, this is realistic. It may not be PC. It may not be something that people want to admit to, but it's true. And you have all these people that are just kind of like lost souls that are just gravitating towards a darker and darker place. And when I mean not darker and darker, demonic, I mean darker and darker as far as like just really crappy human behavior. And people who will sit there and just take this abusive behavior and they just feel they can get away with it, like all people who are drug addicts and people who are kind of like narcissistic. They just think they can just keep doing stuff, and there's people that will just keep letting them do it. It's really fascinating as far as a character study. I really like Alex's work. I'm a huge fan of her work. This interplay with these characters is uncomfortable, but it's uncomfortable because of its realness. And again, remember, this is the mid-70s, 1974, I believe. Women took a lot more crap from men than they had to, and men could get away with a lot more crap because they could get away with it. You can't read this. You gotta look back. I mean, I was born in 64, so as a kid, I wasn't dating. But, the 80s really weren't much different than the 70s, except people were a little bit more wild in the 70s. And this is what I really like this book. It really gets deeper and deeper into their relationship and how toxic it's become. And you have 5 more issues of this series. And you kind of really hope that Dandelion kind of like gets it and stops dating this piece of crap. But like in real life, that usually doesn't happen. You really get invested with the characters. And I think that's the thing about Alex's work, is that after a while you get so invested in these characters, you actually root for certain characters to come out okay. And some characters do come out okay and some don't. And I think that that's just a mark of great comics. That's my take. Alex I'm a big fan of hers. I support her on Patreon. So, I check this out. You may want to look at the first volume of The Devil's Grin, see what it's like. But one other thing about her books is that they do progress. Like, they're kind of like going deeper and deeper and deeper into this heart of darkness. But there usually is a light at the end of her story. It's not like everything ends depressing. It's more of a natural outcome. If you read Dog Biscuits, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That's it. Thanks.